Hi, everyone. Welcome to Satire Can Save Us All. This is the webcast where we talk about cartooning and satire around the globe in this crazy time of coronavirus. And this episode is really going to be great. I have a fun conversation with Steve Brodner, the internationally known illustrator, satirist, caricaturist. He's a lot of fun to talk to, and he's got some really great insights into the realm of creativity. Then our satire correspondent Alexandra Bowman talks to an upcoming young African American artist named Chelsea Saunders about her challenges in these crazy times. And then we close out with a final word from our Muppet in Chief, Mr. Bowser McSchnauzer. So first, let me take you straight to talking to Steve Brodner. Steve Brodner's dynamic satirical illustrations have graced the pages of publications around the globe for over 4 decades. Major magazines and newspapers like the LA Times and New York Times, Washington Post, Esquire, Sports Illustrated, Spy, Harper's, Village Voice, and the list goes on and on. He is also a noted author, educator, lecturer, and political commentator. I caught up with him recently and asked him how all of these things help to inform his brilliant work. In some ways, it sounds to me that you found this kind of happy medium of this passion that you have for the news and news junkie, and then being able to marry it with this other passion of yours, which is art.
Well, first came uh, the fascination with news. That I had when I was a kid, and I guess it all started with the Kennedy assassination, and I was 9 at that time. And so by the time I went to summer camp, I was getting Newsweek and Time magazine sent to the camp, and the other kids are reading Superman and Batman, and I'm reading Newsweek, and I'm reading, you know,
So you were
uh,
that kid.
I'm the kid,
You were that
and
kid.
I had a transistor radio, and I would, because there was no media there.
Mm-hmm.
The only media they had were record players. Kids brought record players from home and Beatles records. But that's how old I am. I had the radio under the pillow,
Mm-hmm.
and I would listen to the Republican National Convention
Wow. Wow.
and listen to the speeches.
Wow.
And there was nobody there to talk to about this
Yeah.
stuff,
Well,
you
this
know.
explains a lot, my friend. So, because
Yeah.
you're.
So first came the interest in public affairs. And come on, it was the 60s.
Mm.
You're probably old enough. I shouldn't insult you, but I think you may remember all this: riots and war and civil rights. Feels familiar. And the space race and all these things all happening at once. And, how could you not be totally involved in it?
Mm.
And Richard Nixon, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon. Uh,
Mm.
so I was there when I was 10 years old, really.
Right. Wow.
My first drawing was of Kennedy,
Mm.
and I did some Johnsons. And then when I was 14, I decided I'd be interested to hear how you got started. But when I was 14, I decided, for reasons I cannot fathom right now, that I would give myself the assignment of doing a cartoon a day. And I did a political cartoon every single day,
Wow,
not for
man.
just for myself.
Wow.
And I
Now,
did that for a couple of years. Then I had a batch of them. I took them to a local Brooklyn newspaper. I grew up in Brooklyn, called the uh, um, Bay News. It was 4 papers: the Bay News, Canarsie, Courier, the Flatbush Life, and one other one. And they all published out of the same place. And can I do a cartoon for you? And they paid me $10 a week. And I drew local politicians and mayors and once in a while the president. And they were terrible. But that's how you learn. And I didn't know. See, here's the most important thing. I didn't know they were terrible. I thought this was okay. I thought it was good.
Mm.
You know?
Well, Steve, this is so interesting because little Steve Brodner is still who you are today because you're doing a daily cartoon now about the events of the day. Tell everybody about this project you're working on right now.
Well, I just felt that what is happening right now is just too urgent for me to be worried about trying to sell them to publications. I want to just, I have a nice following on social media, on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And I thought, let's just do a drawing, a portrait of somebody who's been affected by the crisis and put it up. To me, the idea is these people are probably not being remembered because there's this big avalanche of death, you know. So let's do a face a day and start to talk about. And then, of course, it changed. I did that for a couple of months with the coronavirus. Then it changed to discussing um, people killed by cops or people involved in police violence and racial discrimination and how Trump intersects with all that. I mean, it's just, how could you not want to do something every day about this? So, what the result is that the Nation, Washington Post, other places have taken these and turned them into stories. So there's that, right? Build it and they will come.
Well, this
And
is
so that's what I'm doing
well,
now.
you know, first of all, completely hats off to you something like this, and you know, the 10-year-old Steve Brodner is still alive
I'm
right
still
now,
there.
still going strong.
It's
The
similar, right? Like I do it for myself and then something happens.
So another thing, you had an interesting story that kind of caught fire just a few weeks ago, where you have appeared in the New York Times many times over the years, and the New York Times had a very powerful front page where they listed, once the nation reached 100,000 deaths due to the COVID crisis, that you decided to put out a challenge. Tell us about this challenge.
Well, I didn't put out a challenge. Really, I didn't. I think if you go back to the thing I said on social media was uh, something like, how about a mass art protest? And we take the front page of the Times that had all the names or some of the names of the thousands who died, and we just draw a picture of Trump teeing off.
Playing golf.
That's all I did. And I said, here's an idea. You know, I didn't say challenge to everyone. you know,
It might as well have been a challenge, Steve
well, somebody,
Brodner.
good old Rob Rogers then said, I'm taking the Steve Brodner challenge. And then everybody started to say, I'm going to take the Steve Brodner challenge. And then I saw people doing it who never heard of Steve Brodner and were just doing it because everybody else was doing it. So I guess that's what you call viral,
Yeah,
right?
it was great.
And
And it got
it
recognition too. I mean,
resulted in amazing work.
it's stories that were published about it and so on.
Yeah. And then I was the last one to do one. I thought, well, at the end of it, I guess I ought to do one
You know, I
myself.
apologize. It was a bad week for me. I wasn't able to do one. Is it too late?
No, it's never too
Never
late.
too late. Well, I'll wait till we
But
get to other sad milestones, which we will
you
be
know,
doing for sure.
but it was just this moment that seemed to strike people as the right thing to do,
Yeah.
or a good. The people in this profession, in your profession, are, I have to say, illustrators are nice people and wonderful people, but the cartoonists, it's nothing like this brother and sisterhood of cartoonists. They're generous. They care about each other. They're not nearly as competitive as we are.
Hmm.
And forget about photographers. Photographers will kill you for a shot.
Oh, really?
I'm sorry, but I mean, there's a world of difference between illustrators and photographers in terms of, how personable someone is. But cartoonists are so collegial and easy and relaxed with each other. So, here was this just willingness to try this thing together and not feel like, oh, it's my idea, nobody else can do this idea. It's just like, yeah, all right, this is cool, let's play,
It was
like a
great.
bunch of kids, let's play.
Well,
So it was wonderful.
Well, you know, your work, during this era is, the best people rise to the occasion, and your work is rising to the occasion of mostly of the past 3 years. And I'm wondering if you feel that you're at a zenith of your work. I know that there's been fluctuations up and down of the appetite in publishing for illustration. So maybe there was times in your past when more work was getting out there because of the way things were. But for you, the content that you're delivering, the expertise that you're bringing to the artwork, how do you feel about your work in the present chapter?
I always feel my work falls short. I always feel like I could have done better. I look at my work. You may be able to relate to this work that some people have praised, and I think if I only had another few days.
Yep, I know that feeling.
All I can see is what didn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
and all I can see is we all start. I don't want to speak for you, but I think you probably are like this. We all start with a picture in our heads. We all start with an idea of what this should look like. And now comes the idea of making this thing come up to what's already in here. Now, the reason I will never stop doing this is that there have been moments when not only did it come up to what was in here, but it went further. By itself, when I teach, I say, if you are sketching enough, magic happens. Not every time, it's not guaranteed. But I say, if you're making sketches and you're allowing your mind to just go places, then I say the angel comes. And how many experiences do we have in life where we're sitting in a chair all by ourselves and then something takes a hold of us and takes us someplace? And this happens for me a lot. And that's not to say that I'm always impressed with what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always in process of saying, all right, this is good, but how about this? Well, maybe I'll plug this in, and and the computer is very addictive because it allows you then to not be limited by anything you made. You can, if you ever see a group shot by me, I did this thing of the whole Trump inauguration as the royal family, and there are 45 heads. I didn't like all the heads, but I'm not oppressed by the internet or the Photoshop. Plug in a new head, man. And when you're in the music business, or if you're in the film editing business, they like to say, we'll fix it in post.
Right.
So why can't we do that?
Sure.
Why can't we say we'll fix it in post?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Take out that violin solo and do it again. Do 5 of them and pick your favorite one, plug that in. So that's what I do.
Yeah. So what about some of these other? You told about some examples of cartoons or illustrations that went its own way, took a life of their own. Give me some more examples of that.
Well, the ones that have been best received, I think, were the royal family, and the best received thing I've done in years, maybe in my whole life, was where Donald Trump is combing his hair, and we see underneath his comb over is a swastika. And this got reproduced endlessly, projected on buildings, and people made posters and carried them in the streets. And I didn't know how that was going to. I didn't even know if it was possible to do that. As you know, some things you have in your head, and they just, for one reason or another, they don't work. You're certain the thing is going to work, and it doesn't. And then other things just fall out of your pencil in 5 minutes. And why? I have no idea. It's out of your hands. It's completely out of your hands. You're just making stuff, and then it goes off. It's like these little creatures start dancing around your drawing table, and they do what they want to do, and you're kind of just like watching. Have you had that experience? You're just sort of like watching this thing, this little movie that's happening over here, and I can explain it to you because you've done this, but ordinary people have no idea what the hell I'm talking. And why would you want to sit for 12 hours in a chair in the dark at 3 a.m. and endlessly play like this? Because they don't know this experience, and I can't explain it to them. So those of you out there watching this and you think I'm crazy, good, feel that way.
Well, it is just
Kal knows.
Yeah.
Kal knows I'm talking.
You do get this, and that's part of the thing why I admire you and I respect what you do, is in part because of your complete commitment to this. And now for a second, while I'm talking to you, I'm really addressing those watching who may not have um, mastered the art in the way that you have. In that you're drawing since you were 10 years old. This kind of passionate,
And I'm 65 now.
you're drawing,
So that's 55 years
55 years of drawing, and
every single day.
it gets to a point because of that exercise that you are communicating something in your brain, and those messages go through all the tissues and the bones and the sinews through your hands, then
Yeah.
into an inanimate object, a pencil, a pen, a brush, whatever. And then they go across the surface. But because that communication line from your brain to the tip of that pencil has become so acute, you don't even know it's happening. You're looking at the paper and it's appearing.
Right.
And because you've created that, it allows your brain and your thoughts to kind of just start to take shape. Now, at the same time, again, I'm postulating what it probably is for you, but I'm sure this happens. In the course of sketching, it's a course of discovery. You think things might look a certain way, but you start to move them on the page, and then other things start to appear, and you explore and you create.
Every sketch is you're saying, how about this? How about this? Like you're having an internal conversation. One part of you says, well, Steve, how about this? And then the other Steve says, I don't know. Let's see. And then he looks at it. Steve number 2 says, usually, yes, but.
Right.
Yes, but.
You only have 2 Steves in your head?
There's probably a lot more than that.
There is a lot more. Because then you get the color Steve in the back saying, that would be better in color. Don't do it black and white.
And then the black and white Steve says, shut the hell up, you idiot. You've been working in black and white for years and it works fine.
That's it.
Don't worry about your goddamn color. It'll only distract people.
Right.
And then I have to jump in and negotiate between them and say, look, a little color's fine. Shut up. It'll be fine.
But I think the creative process is a lot like that. I tell folks it is a conversation. It's a boardroom, and these people yelling at each other with their different ideas and experts, and then you throw in particularly in your case, you throw in this conversation. By the way, is just on the art side. That we're not even talking about the editorial side. We're not just talking about the content side. That's another room that comes in with their portfolio saying, all right, lads, we've come up with this strategy. You artists take care of this. And then one of your masterful skills is composition, where you're weaving all of these characters that you do in this graceful movement. And so that's another whole skill set in addition to the sketching, in addition to the caricature. So you wear many hats.
Composition is the only tool we have that enables us to direct the eye of the viewer, right? You have a frame. Inside that frame, something is number 1, something is number 2, something is number 3. If what is number 1 doesn't appear to the eye of the stranger, the viewer, until number 3, it's messed up. It's not going to work. What's first in the mind has to be first in the eye of the viewer every time. And if you don't have we call in art school, your hierarchy, right, then you have to keep sketching until you figure it out. But until you have the frame, the composition, then you have no idea what's positive and negative space. So yeah, you're right. We're doing that all the time also.
Mm. So
when I teach illustration, first I say, I want to see a rough sketch. And once you have your idea that you like, and between you and me, I hope none of my students are listening, it doesn't matter. That part doesn't matter. It can be, man walks down the street and he sees a purple dog. That's all. The idea can also be Donald Trump combs his hair and he finds a swastika underneath. Whatever, it doesn't matter. What the thing that matters is the second level of sketching, which I call staging. And I have them do that. Go through the trouble of taking your good rough idea, and now you're going to make 5, 6, 7, 8 radically different designs where something that was small is now big, something that is big is now small. Turn it around, make it horizontal, make it vertical, whatever. You're going to play with it enough so that you can, I'm forcing them to have this compositional conversation with themselves. So you can take any idea, you can take a lousy idea and turn it into something good. You can take a good idea and turn it into something great. And if you ignore this, you can take a very good idea and flush it down the toilet, because you will not have the narrative. The viewer will not be able to know where to go first, second, third, fourth. And I love the brilliant French illustrator, cartoonist Sampé, Jean-Jacques Sampé, still with us, living in France, and he does famous New Yorker covers. And what's characteristic about him is the number one character, where your eye is supposed to go first, is always teeny tiny. It's always the little ballet dancer in the corps de ballet, little girl who goes up on the stage and everybody's looking at her. And you have the big stage with all the flowers and all the decorations and the theater, beautiful theater. And why do we look at that one little girl? And she's like the size of a bug, really, on the illustration. But he gets us to go there first. He uses color, contrast, and value, whites and blacks. Bang, we get there. He's a master. I urge anybody to study Sampé, S-E-M-P-E. I've never gotten the privilege to meet him, but I'm a big fan of his, and I use him as an example of how it doesn't have to be big to be number one, but you've got to know what number one is. You've got to know where you're sending your viewer. It's a movie. Every composition is a movie. We go 1, 2, 3, 4. If you get that right, it's a moving picture, and you can tell your story, because story is everything. Story is number one. I'll shut up now. Go ahead.
Well, no, the reason why I got to step in here, Steve,
I told you I won't shut up.
No, this is great, because this is for any of the viewers out there. You can understand why Steve is such a great teacher, right? You went down this path and created this images with no pictures behind us of what's required, what's needed, the passion, the care, the experience. The students you have are so lucky. I had the good fortune of once visiting one of your classes and watching you in action. And I come from a family of teachers. I'm one who's a massive advocate for teaching. And one of the things, I think, one of the great gifts that you're giving to the world, in addition to your art, which will linger for so many in the minds of so many, is that you have touched so many young, learning brains, and left your fingerprints and your footprints and your elbow prints in their heads.
Little finger.
And
yes.
in order to try to help further the cause of art and illustration. So on that, I got a question for you.
Thank you, Cal.
Is that we are living in a very uncertain time, in a million ways. One of the ways, for those who are trying to explore the arena of graphic satire, visual satire, it's changing dramatically, so that the traditional print home for those things may not be around, or the opportunities there be very narrow. There may be new opportunities on the web yet to be discovered, certainly soon to be explored. You're teaching a lot of folks who may not find a way to make a profession out of this, or whatever. What are you trying to give people?
Why would you teach illustration, right? What is the rationale at this point to teach this thing that is in such terrible, it was in terrible trouble before what happened now, has taken journalism to an extinction leveled event, as they say. There can be no journalism in the present model without advertising. And where's our advertising? It's just gone away. So what the hell are you doing here?
Well, I imagine that part of what you're doing this, but you're giving a gift to these people that even if they don't find a way to make this a profession, it's about a way of thinking. It's about a way of organizing their thoughts.
They're not going to have the career that I had. They're not going to probably have the career you had. They are going to find other ways to tell stories, but they do. Okay, the young artists are telling stories in fascinating, interesting ways using all kinds of tools. Yes, there is the internet where there is not a lot of money. Okay. So there is no Baltimore Sun waiting out there for them in the internet, or in my case, Washington Post or LA Times or Harper's or Columbia Journalism Review. Those things exist, but it's you're not going to make a career on that. And so, what are we doing here? And I think the thing that has happened while the rest of it has died away, that is so fantastic, is storytelling on a broader scale, where you are the author. If you can be the author of stories and you can do comics, graphic novels, graphic memoir, film, children's books, you're good. You are good. Uh, these skills will enable you to work for the rest of your life, because it doesn't matter what the medium is. If you are a true storyteller, people are hungry for stories. People want stories just as much now as they did 40,000 years ago, because stories are the story is the way in which we tell each other about what life is like. And from caveman days, I'm sure they were communicating about, if you go over there, there's an animal that's going to eat you because it ate Murray. These were Jewish cavemen.
Poor Murray.
And yeah,
There's always a
and
Murray.
oh, look, you won't believe what he went over there, and oh, don't go over there, they said. And the first thing that happens to a little child is children's books. I'm going to read you and they just can't believe how exciting it is. And you say, I'm going to tell you a story. Anybody at any age, you say to your friend, you say, how are you today? And they say, I got to tell you a story. And you're like 3 years old again. Tell me. The first thing a child learns how to do, and I was astonished. My daughter Terry, who just published her first children's book, was a year and a half, and she says, "Mommy, my shoe hurts." This is what we struggle to learn how to do with pictures. But a year and a half old baby knows how to say everything in the right order, and she has the hierarchy completely right. Why? Because they have to. It's an imperative for survival to be able to say, "Mommy, you, God, hey God, I need your attention. My shoe hurts." It's perfect. And Mommy, I'm afraid of the dog. Daddy, I want candy now. We figure this out in the very beginning, how to do this. And we'll always be communicating this way. And the most exciting work is being done in books and graphic novels and graphic memoirs. So get your work at The Economist. I think The Economist is going to be around, and they'll be paying for art. Probably not paying you enough, but you're doing gorgeous work for them. And for many years, it's a legendary relationship. You are one of the very best in the world. And I can't believe your facility and your output and skill and brains and humor all together. As I said, athlete.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
I think there'll always be in England, and there'll always be an
An
Economist.
Economist. That's good.
And there'll always be, I believe, always be a New York Times. And I think the New York Times, one of these days, will not be a print thing. It'll be maybe on your hand. Maybe you'll have a chip, and then it appears on your hand, and then you can scroll down.
Anyways, well, we
need stories, and so my kids are going to learn to tell stories. I have kids doing animations, doing books, former students of mine that I'm very proud of. I'm still friends with, which is another great thing about teaching. You stay friends with young people, and I'm not worried about them. It's the ones who are going to wait around for a phone call from Reader's Digest. They're not going anywhere.
Well, Steve,
I'm sorry.
Look, I think this is a great place for us to end our conversation, because it is on a hopeful note at a time when there seems to be so much darkness everywhere. even just in our profession, you are seeing a glimmer of light, a glimmer of hope, and your work has always been about change, dynamism. Let's get things done, try to make things happen. And I suspect that if you were 20-year-old now going to a Steve Brodner class, you would be one of those people coming out of it saying, I'm going to make something happen for the next generation. So you've inspired so many people, and your work inspires professionals like me. You're a delight to
Likewise,
have, man. So
it's a
thanks for
pleasure.
coming on the webcast.
So, thank you, Cal. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and I wish you continued brilliance, which I'm absolutely certain is happening.
Many thanks, my friend. Boy, talking to Steve is so much fun. He's a dynamic, energetic character, as you can see. And also, considering the huge volume of great work he's produced over decades, I suspect there's more than two creative Steves going on in his brain right now. Next, I want to show you a clip of a conversation between our satire correspondent, Alexandra Bowman, and a young upcoming African-American artist named Chelsea Saunders. Have a listen.
Yeah, but no, it's been a transformative week of cartoons, and I'm so grateful to finally be able to see them. And I noticed your work, and it was that Joe Biden cartoon was actually what made me think, oh my gosh, we should reach out to her to ask her to talk. I was going to ask you, like, how do you get at that punchy poignance, like the kind of where you jolt someone out of a feeling with your cartoons, with the words in your cartoons? Like, how do you get at that feeling, that message so well?
Oh my God, thank you.
I mean it sincerely.
It's an interesting question. Generally, like for the Joe Biden cartoon specifically, I just remember reading that article where he said that pretty much exact thing. And then, it's funny, like me and my family had always joked about like the black card and like, oh, what does it mean to be black? And then it's kind of just like combining those two ideas, like the irony that just a non-person of color is validating someone else's blackness just based on a vote. That alone is like hilarious. It's terrible. It's terrible, but like it's so ironic. I read it in the morning and I just started like laughing, which is, I don't know, maybe it means I'm like a psychopath. Because people will say, like, I get a lot of messages where it says, you're not helping the blue wave. Like by making content and promoting content that's anti-Biden, that I'm hurting the cause. But in a way, fine, yeah, I am poking fun at Biden. He poked fun at himself with those comments, right? Like me just stating exactly what he's saying is hurting the cause. That's what I'm hearing. Like, oh, you shining a light on a problem is bad for liberals. And it's like, well, I always hear liberals quoting Michelle Obama. They go low, you go high, but I'm not seeing that high behavior. So I just want to push people on the left and the right to expect more. And I think like if people get mad at me for that, then screw it.
You can see more of this conversation between Alexandra Bowman and Chelsea Saunders on our YouTube page. Go to youtube.com, search for Satire Can Save Us All, and you'll see clips from that interview as well as some of our past episodes. Now, this leaves us with just one last thing, a final word from our friend, Mr. Bowser McSchnauzer. Hello! So, Mr. Bowser, thank you for coming. You have a final word? Yes, I do. And tell me what that word is. That word is dinner. Dinner? Dinner. It's dinner time. I'm hungry. Get out of here. All right, I guess it's my time to go right now. Okay, I know you're hungry, Mr. Bowser. So thank you all for coming. We'll see you guys again next week after dinner. And we will join us for another episode of Satire Can Save Us All after dinner. Take care.